In Skyrim, you come across many Dark Elves in your adventures, mainly the whole bunch kicking it in the slums of the Grey Quarter and the not-quite-thriving group on the island of Solstheim, plus you'll see a few scattered throughout the rest of Skyrim, but obviously the best look at their alien, crazy culture will be in the Elder Scrolls III Morrowind. But how did the creators at Bethesda come up with all of this? What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to FudgeMuppet. My name is Scott, and today we have got what could be the first in a brand new series of videos, a series where we dive into the Elder Scrolls lore and dig around in real-world history and mythology to find its inspirations. So today, who are the Dunmer? Really? What is the story behind their creation? This is a huge question, and we are going to have to unpack it piece by piece, starting with one of the most fundamental parts of Dunmer society. We are talking about the Tribunal gods in Morrowind. Well, the gods who used to be there. They are well gone by the time of Elder Scrolls V Skyrim in the 4th era, but if you have played ESO, you will have met Almalexia, as well as Vivec in the Morrowind DLC, and Sothasil in the Clockwork City DLC. Now personally, I'm not a big ESO fan, I just keep up to date on the lore, but that aside, let's first get everyone up to speed on the Tribunal in terms of Elder Scrolls lore. The Tribunal, also known as Almsavie, which is just a combo of Almalexia, Alm, Sothasil, Si, and Vivec, Vi, Almsavie. These were the ruling god kings of Morrowind from the 700th year of the First Era until approximately the 433rd year of the Third Era. So just for reference, these three individuals have been the ruling gods of Morrowind for 3,549 years. For reference, in our real-world timeline, that would be like having the same rule since the Bronze Age, the time of the Mycenaean Greeks, all the way until modern day. Just to give you some scope of how long they've been gods. A long time. So let's go a long time ago and get everyone up to speed on their origins so we can then show comparisons to real-world history and mythologies. So let's start with the Kaima. Kaima means people of the north. When I hear people of the north, I think Nords, but Morrowind is far to the northeast relative to the Somerset Isles, especially where the Aldmer were. So the Kaima, called Changed Ones, Changed Folk, or Velothi, were a bunch of Aldmer originally who were shitty with the fact that the Aldmer were abandoning their worship of their ancestors, instead choosing to worship a select few powerful ancestor spirits, aka the Aedra. Veloth, who was like a prophet of the Kaima, led them to the land of Morrowind, known by them as Resdain at the time, where they would worship the three good Daedra, Boethia, Azura, and Mephala, in addition to their ancestor worship. Interestingly, comparisons between Veloth and a real-world historical figure from South America named Tenoch can be drawn. Tenoch was a ruler of the Aztecas and well-respected chief. Now, people debate over whether Tenoch was a real person, a mythological figure, or a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B, but overall the story goes that Tenoch led the Aztecs away from the ruling elite of priests in the legendary Aztec ancestral home of Aztlan, which is postulated to be a variety of potential real-world locations, all the way to Lake Texcoco, where the Aztec city of Tenochtitlan is formed on an island in the lake, which is named after Tenoch himself. Similar to how Veloth led the Kaima all the way from the ruling religious authority who worshipped the Aedra away from their ancestral home in the Somerset Isles, all the way to Morrowind, where they found a new culture. Funnily enough, Tenochtitlan is built over a lake, making this cool water city, kind of like Vivec in Morrowind built over the water. Additionally, Veloth could be seen as a Moses-like figure from Judaism who led the Jews across the sea away from the oppression of the Egyptians, similar to Veloth leading the Kaima away from the oppressive dogma of the Aldmer. So back to the Elder Scrolls. The Kaima culture or Velothi culture went on through the Merethic era into the First Era. At some point, a big empire of Nords spreads over Morrowind, and the Kaima team up with Dwemer to push the Nords out of their homeland. They are successful, and this is the birth of the First Council. Then, long story short, the Dwemer and Kaima fought against each other afterwards because the Dwemer were going to use the tools of Kagrenac and the Heart of Lorkhan to achieve Divinity. The leader of the Kaima people, Indoral Nerevar, wasn't having it and fought the Dwemer, but suddenly the Dwemer disappeared, and that disappearance still remains a mystery to this day. There are multiple stories for the next phase of the story. Indoral Nerevar either died in battle or was was murdered later by Vivec, Sothosil, and Almalexia. Either way, these three gods went against Azura and used the tools of Kagranak on the heart of Lorkhan, which made them the living gods that they are. That's when Azura got pissy and cursed the Kai'ma with red eyes and ash skin, making them the Dunmer people. Then the Tribunal told their people to take pride in their new appearance, and they became the living gods of Morrowind for millennia. So now to the real-world inspirations. Where would you think the inspirations for such gods came from? Morrowind's culture in itself is a really unique mix of many different cultures, which we'll get to later in the video, but let's keep on point with the gods. So it may actually not surprise you that the Tribunal of Living Gods take huge inspiration from the Hindu pantheon of India. Hindu religion itself is a crazy complex religion with different versions of gods, different stories, different origin stories interpreted by different cultures, but there are some popular ones, and one of the most popular groups of gods are referred to as the Trimurti, the Trinity of supreme divinity in Hinduism. There are three gods: Brahma, the creator; Vishnu, the preserver; and Shiva, the destroyer. These three gods play a huge part in Hindu religion, and they aren't also as cut and dry in their roles as creator, preserver, and destroyer. They have many other traits and aspects attributed to them. Hinduism believes in a cyclical nature of the universe, meaning that the creator, the beginning, the preserver, the time in between, and the destroyer, the end of time, play an important role and are essential to a cyclical universe. So where does the Elder Scrolls come in? Now, this is just me spitballing some ideas and connections, so you can feel free to disagree. But for starters, we have the Tribunal, a trinity of divine beings: Almalexia, Vivec, and Sothosil, just like the Trimurti of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Obviously, they aren't directly the same, but in my eyes, you can see Almalexia as a creator, her being known as the mother of Morrowind, and also the fact she remains in her Kai'ma form, like all the Dunmer were before Azura's curse. Almalexia also could have been the one pushing for Nerevar's murder, her husband, prompting the use of the tools, and the creation of them as gods. Vivec can be seen like Vishnu, representing the space in between creation and destruction, the duality, with half Kai'ma skin and half Dunmer skin. Vivec, like Krishna, who is the 8th avatar of Vishnu, was one of the most popular of the three. Vivec was considered to be the most popular deity of the Tribunal. He guards Morrowind from the evils of Red Mountain and has performed many great feats and trials throughout history, many featured in the 36 Lessons of Vivec. The 36 Lessons of Vivec involve defeating demonic Northmen, some with mouths of mud, some with 2 tongues. It has stories of Vivec giving his head to Molag Bal to have sex with, and snapping off Molag Bal's dick to make a spear and kill all their demon offspring, along with all kinds of time-bending, split personality, duality kind of stuff. It gets crazy, which is not unlike the crazy stories of Krishna, where he saves his town from the angry storm god Indra by lifting a mountain and using it as an umbrella, or when his mother opens his mouth as a child to see if he's been eating sand, but instead she sees the entire universe. There is also this hilarious story where Krishna takes a bunch of girls' clothes and climbs a tree, and he won't give them back their clothes until they show their tits. It's literally the Show Bob's Please meme embedded in their actual mythology. There is also some cool duality stuff in Hinduism, with male and female counterparts, and half skin one color with half the other in depictions, all of which Vivec embodies, being a hermaphrodite and half Kai'ma, half Dunmer. Also, Vivec is seen floating in the lotus position, which, yeah, yoga. Finally, there is Sothosil, which I sort of see as a destroyer, not in the malicious, angry sense we usually associate destruction with. Sothosil presents himself as a Dunmer, the changed form, representative of the destruction of the Kai'ma people as they were. His Clockwork City is a creation where he hopes to reshape the world and forge the future, but in order to do that, I imagine one would have to destroy the world, or at least something. Overall, the gods of the Tribunal are eerily similar in many aspects to the Trimurti of real-world Hindu religion, but let's get started on the Dunmer themselves. So we have their gods heavily inspired by Hinduism. How about their architecture, their culture, the food, the clothes? Let's dive in. So we can start with the easy stuff, the aesthetics. You know, the architecture, the armor, the clothes, all the stuff that is quite honestly, for Dark Elves in particular, not that easy to pick the direct inspirations because it's so unique and alien. One of the many reasons the Dunmer are my favorite. For example, I'm not aware of any real-world cultures wearing bone mold armor and having mushroom towers or living in giant crab skeletons, but overall I think there is a heavy Asian influence in the aesthetic. Indian, Japanese, Chinese, Thai, and other South Asian isles, but also West Asian as well, as in the Middle East. Those influences also make it in there. We would often associate drapery and wraps on clothing and armor with Middle Eastern style dress and other drier Asian regions because quite simply it's hot and sandy, so they have it to keep the sand and heat away. Same deal in Morrowind. The wraps and skirts and fabrics worn by many of the guards in places like Alduin are a direct defense against ash storms. Likewise, you can make a trip to Vivec and find the gondola men wearing conical hats, much like the conical hats you see all over Asia, the typical rice paddy hat. You also have foods like salt rice, which is a staple of Morrowind, which of course makes you related to other real-world cultures that use rice as a staple food, aka China, and also just the geography, the mixture of grasslands, marshlands, fertile riverlands are also reminiscent of fertile lands in China's east. Bits of Persian also make their way in with the rugs, reminding me of Persian rugs. But then there are all the lanterns and what look like rice paper partitions for people to dress behind for privacy. Ordinator masks are reminiscent of masks in Persia or the Byzantine Empire. Also, a lot of the Ordinator swords are like the Khopesh style of Egyptian swords. The architecture either looks like it belongs in Asia or on the planet Tatooine, stuff like that. Aesthetically, I can almost say with certainty that Morrowind is heavily inspired by Asia, albeit a very twisted and alien version of it. However, that's just on the surface, not necessarily the same deal for the culture itself. So let's look into that. Once again, to get everyone up to speed, we will break down the Dunmer culture as it was for the majority of history, since the eruption of Red Mountain has made things a little bit different, but we can talk about that later. Originally, the Dark Elves were ruled by the Tribunal of Living Gods for most of their history, Almalexia, Vivec, and Sothasil, or simply Almsavi. So this is basically the highest authority, and all the Dunmer people worship these gods, with the exception of a group called the Ashlanders, which still worship the Daedra, Azura, Mephala, and Boethia, the traditional good Daedra of the Kaima people. So outside of the Ashlanders, we have the rest of society in Morrowind that worship the Tribunal. There are the 5 great houses of the Dunmer people, House Indoril, which is incredibly intertwined with the Tribunal Temple, fierce and zealous, and of course they have those sweet Ordinator masks, House Redarin, the honourable and pious warriors with great respect for family, honor, and tradition. House Dress are the dudes with the control over the Deshan Plains, owning lots of land, lots of farms, and lots of slaves to work on them. They are the ones who jog down to Black Marsh to pick themselves up some Argonian slaves. House Lalu is the merchant diplomatic-like house who has an advantageous relationship with the Imperial Empire, which really pisses off the rest of the Dunmer. And then of course there are the reclusive wizard lords in their mushroom towers, House Telvanni. So you're probably asking what the hell mushroom wizard and lizard slaving houses have in common with real-world cultures. Well, just hold on a second, I'm thinking. It's kind of hard to pin down, because simply there are great houses, each with a council, that have a grand councillor or top dog, who then goes to a bigger council between all of the top dog members of all the great houses, but then again they still have to do whatever the Tribunal says, and on top of that they have the Morag Tong assassins performing legal executions amongst the houses. It's pretty messy, and I'm not sure there is a direct analogy in real-world history. However, there is the Nerevarine. Now, long story short, the Nerevarine, the player character in Elder Scrolls III Morrowind, is the reincarnation of the Dunmer hero Indoril Nerevar. Now, Ashlanders in particular have this prophecy as part of their religious beliefs, believing that the Nerevarine will come and rid Morrowind of the false gods. This kind of prophecy has been in many cultures, but interestingly enough, linking it back to Hinduism and the themes of avatars, incarnations of gods doing cool shit, there have been many Nerevarines before the one you play as in Morrowind, sort of like how there were multiple avatars of Vishnu, for example. But yes, anyways, this prophecy comes true, and then the gods are killed except Vivec, who disappeared. Then Red Mountain explodes, and it's essentially Armageddon for the Dark Elves. Their religion is reformed, the false gods being referred to as saints, and the good Daedra, Mephala, Azura, and Boethia reclaiming their place as the patron deities of the Dark Elves. Besides this, there was a massive diaspora of elves that fled to the west, to places like Skyrim, places like the Grey Quarter, the slums. Now, this can actually be seen as similar to the Jews who, after the destruction of Jerusalem and the burning of the Second Temple in 70 AD, which forced the Jews from their home, and as a result, they migrated to the western lands in Europe. So there is one similarity, and there are a few other loose ones, like the Ashlanders being the Israelite tribes. You have the pagan Romans, aka Imperials, coming into Morrowind in the Third Era, trying to enforce their rule, kind of like the Romans in Jerusalem. The Dwemer also, at the very least stylistically, look very much like the Sumerians Sumerians or Babylonians, the latter of which were very involved in Jewish history. Indoril Nerevar himself could be seen as a Saul-like figure, Saul who united the 12 tribes of Israel, like Indoril united the clans of Morrowind to fight the Nords, but then funnily enough the Ordinators bear similarities to the Roman secret police, the Frumentarii, hunting out those heretics. Overall, I think this is by far one of the most complex races in the Elder Scrolls, with a large group of possible inspirations and influences, including ancient Hebrew, Persian, Indian, Hindu, Chinese, Japanese, Mongolian, Thai, essentially picking from all of Asia, plus even bits of Africa like the Egyptians, and of course all of this is very thoroughly mixed, considering that they are freaking riding on giant ticks, using lizard and cat slaves, living in mushroom towers, and eating floating jellyfish. It's kinda nuts, so you have to take all of these comparisons with a grain of salt, and remember it's easy to extend these connections to other cultures I didn't mention, but that, ladies and gentlemen, is who I think the Dunmer are, really. Now guys, this is something I really want to see discussed in the comments. What else can you think of? What are the similarities between the Dark Elves and real-world cultures and mythologies? Also, we are keen to see if you like this type of video, as it's a little bit different to our usual stuff, so please give the video a like to show your support if you enjoyed it, and go down into the comments and let us know what race you would like to see explored in the next video. For example, who are the Red Guards, really? I really like real-world history and mythology and have a lot of fun exploring this video and creating it. Thanks so much for watching. My name is Scott from FudgeMuppet, and I'll be glad to see you in the next one.